I'm just going to do a quick introduction. I'm Lucas Webster. Thanks everybody for joining us today on behalf of the Construction Law section and its counsel. We appreciate everybody's participation in the second series of our programs relating to supply chain impact. I want to do a couple of quick thank yous and then and some introductions, and then we'll go ahead and get into the program. Quickly, I wanted to thank the Construction Law Section Committee from the Council for helping to put these programs together, and that's Matt Hjortsberg, Skylar Bailey, Judge Andrea Leahy, Jim Thompson, Sean Matlock, and myself. So thanks all of you guys for your hard work in getting this to where we are. I want to also thank our current chair, Kevin Callahan, for the support and advocacy for the programming that we've been able to do so far this year. Also Darren Burns, who's done a lot of communications with folks to promote and market the program. Last, I want to give a quick thank you to Angela Monroe at MSBA. Angela has done a lot of work to help not just technically support the sections and help facilitate these types of online programs, but also just supports us from anything and everything under the sun across the board. So thank you very much, Angela. With that, I will introduce and also thank the participants and the speakers in the program today. First, I'm going to introduce Dave Clem. Dave is the Vice President of Commercial Sales for the Washington region at Dominion Electric Supply Company, Inc. Dave, as Vice President of Commercial Sales, he leads Dominion Electric's outside sales teams, project managers, quotation staff, quality control team, all that kind of fun stuff. Some of their larger projects include things like the International Spy Museum, the Dulles Corridor Metro Silver Line, the Nestle's headquarters in Arlington. Dave has been in the construction industry for 35 years, and he's been with Dominion for 26. I'm also going to introduce Kathleen Tribble from Dominion Electric Supply. She's Director of Sales Operations. She has 21 years with Dominion, and she has been incredibly valuable to help us put together the program materials and information you're going to see. But Kathleen does not want to speak today, so please don't ask her any questions. I'm also going to introduce Christine Pham. Christine is the Associate General Counsel at Cowan Systems, and we're really happy to have her today talking about some of the transportation side issues that many of us don't really understand at all, and sharing some light in that respect. Serving sort of as the primary moderator today is going to be Robert Shuster. Rob's a friend of mine, and I enlisted him in this program, I don't know, whenever we started the process. Rob is the managing member of Robert G. Shuster, LLC, a law firm in Montgomery County. He's been practicing law for over 30 years, primarily focused on representing subcontractors and suppliers in the commercial construction industry for claims in both state, federal courts, Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Rob also represents folks in contract negotiations, project issues that arise, and commercial real estate matters and general disputes that we all know and love in the construction industry. So I want to thank each of our speakers very much for the hard work they've put forth so far to get the program materials together and off the ground. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, Rob, Kathleen, and Christine. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas.
Thanks, Lucas. I appreciate that. Appreciate everybody joining us. Just want to start out by going over what our agenda today is going to be. We are going to speak to the supply chain and what our life and business looked like pre-COVID. I'm going to speak to the current state of the supply chain and the disruption, and then how we are managing through that disruption. A short outlook, and then afterwards the Q&A session. Feel free during the presentation to send any questions through the chat, and Rob and Lucas are going to moderate those questions. I'll do the best I can to answer anything. This isn't my day job, so I hope that I can share some of our experiences, and it'll be helpful to some folks that are on this. So with that, going into the introduction, I want to introduce everybody to our company. Dominion Electric Supply. We are a family-owned, independent, locally operated electrical distributor. We've been in business for more than 80 years. We have 10 counter locations, 3 lighting showrooms, and we manage over 225,000 square feet of inventory throughout the DMV. We employ more than 300 people. And many of those folks are second generation employees, and with a few that are third generation. Our greatest strength is and always has been our people, who have adapted and evolved with the marketplace and the needs of our customers and the trends that shape our industry. And to quote our CEO, Stephen Kruth, is challenge the status quo. And that has certainly stretched us in the last 2 years, and as we navigate these difficult times. With that, I would like to let Christine introduce Cowan System. So Christine.
Christine, you're muted.
All right. I am a little discombobulated because I have no Wi-Fi whatsoever. And so I'm trying to do this on my phone and remember what I wrote in my presentation materials. So I apologize. Cowan Systems is a transportation company that was founded and is based here in Baltimore. We provide transportation services across the country, across numerous modalities, and are a dedicated fleet predominantly, meaning that most of our freight is for customers who we have had longstanding relationships. Of course, we also have backhauls and have customers who only need a few loads occasionally or one time. And we also have affiliates that do brokerage and intermodal work. And I'm very happy to be at this company. I just joined a couple of years ago from a law firm in Baltimore where I only did litigation and not transportation litigation at that. So it is a fantastic company that has been around for a long time and is built on strong relationships, not only with our employees, but with our customers and our partners and vendors. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Christine. I'm going to get into pre-COVID, what our world looked like. And we hear the term, day in and day out, price and availability. So our clients would ask us price and availability, and it were really the negotiations were driven by price and not availability. It was how much does it cost, and oh, by the way, when can I get it? Typically, our orders were shipped within the published lead times. We had our contractors that would get our published lead times, and we counted on them to back into that lead time and release it in a timely manner. The only time we ever had really an extended lead time was a plant would have some, an influx of business where it was really a capacity issue that kind of purged out, within months if they took on a certain volume of business. We had a few other weather-related issues where we've had weather in the southern United States. There's 3 plants that are in the South that produce PVC, which is a big item for us. And that weather would impact those plants and their ability to produce the PVC as the weather shut them down. We'd have occasional strikes, shortened hours on the road from the trucking industry, which is a current situation. And every now and then we would have a component shortage, but it was really more about, pricing than it was availability. Pre-COVID, our pricing was annual price increases were typically 5%. They would come at the end of the year. We'd be prepared for them. We'd get letters from manufacturers that gave us early notice, sometimes 60 days. And those price increases would rarely stick. They would typically be negotiated down. And we were well prepared to deal with these price increases with our customers. The tariffs of 2018 threw us quite a curveball. The prior administration imposed the import fees on Chinese products that were imposed. Price increases were structured based on the different published tiers, which is on this chart right here, the different stages. These price increases were vendor price increases that typically followed the tariff schedule. So they were assessed on the finished product, versus the components. And these were much larger than the 5% price increases. Prior to any of that or any supply chain issues, we normally could place a hold order and that would lock in our pricing. So no longer can a hold order, lock in a price, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So that was availability and pricing pre-COVID, a little bit about what our world looked like. I'll now kind of walk through the current state of the disruption, which is more about availability than it is price. And so the pricing, in our current climate, give a few examples of what we're living through every day, is our switchgear department in the last 12 months has had 5 price increases, anywhere from roughly 5% to 12%. And the overall price increase has been just above 44%. These price increases are sticking, and it's making it very difficult to negotiate with vendors and customers. These prices are modified constantly, very little warning. And the 60 days that we used to have notice for the price increases they're gone. We regularly find out about a price increase after we've placed a hold order. And some of the vendors are issuing price increases every 30 days with little notice. On our stock and flow side of our business, which is the parts and pieces that make up the infrastructure of an electrical system in a building. Those are straps, fittings, receptacles, dimmers, all those kind of parts and pieces. We've had over 200 price increases from our vendors in the last 6 months. So you can see the different climate, how the climate has changed and how challenging it is for us. And if we talk about the price quotes, so the quotes that we put out into the marketplace, most vendors stated that we could hold that price for 30 days, and that was rarely enforced pre-COVID. So we would put a quote out into the marketplace in February, and in July, we could still negotiate on that project. Our vendors are now not honoring these quotes past 30 days. Some are holding the 30-day expiration date and actually backing it down to 15 days. And that's how volatile the market is. So our climate has changed. These smaller manufacturers have no way to hold the pricing. The larger manufacturers are more reluctant than ever to hold these prices due to transportation, component cost, and unexpected price increases from their vendors. So they're no longer taking these hold orders, and there is no cancellation or no returns once we have placed this order. We have one vendor that has introduced to us dynamic pricing, and this is one of Dominion's main vendors. So the pricing is actually based on the availability of product. So when we go into their software system, to our vendor software system, and we price up product that our customers want to purchase, that pricing is different day to day based on availability. And so we're having to quote some of the off-the-shelf products almost like we quote commodities, which is this is the price today. We need to place this order to secure this price. Going into availability in the current state, so we've had a significant delay in shortage of products in mainly the resins. So the resins are the foundation of the plastics that are used in meter boxes, plastic outlet boxes, and circuit breakers. So that shortage has really been a constant factor that we hear when we ask for details of why an order would get delayed. And as everybody knows, there's a major chip shortage, and this is April Fool's. It's not a Lay's chip shortage, but it's a computer chip shortage. So I think this has impacted everybody's life. You know, whether you're buying an automobile, an appliance for your refrigerator, or appliance for your kitchen, say refrigerator, dishwasher. You know, our normal day-to-day products all have these computer chips in them. And so do the electronic trip circuit breakers that are in the equipment that we sell. We've also had issues with lead times that are impacted by social distancing. So a factory that had 200 employees working on the plant floor, they now have 30 to 50 now due to social distancing. So, you know, that obviously greatly impacts their production ability. We've had fluid lead times, and we have a vendor that we placed an order. It was 20 weeks when we got the lead time, and then by the time we actually got that order released, you know, that lead time could go up to 40 to 60 weeks that we're saying. So these quoted lead times are subject to change. We actually had a project that we were awarded, and we placed the order. The specifier decided that they needed to make modifications to this order. It took 2 weeks for the factory to re-engineer, and the lead time that we had quoted that was 20 weeks, once we released it, was 60 weeks. So it's not uncommon to hear that it's going to take over a year to get your equipment. So the mentality is shifted, and it's not as much how much does it cost, it's when can I get it. And there's the increased demands that really nobody expected post-COVID have played a big part in this as well.
Dave,
yes.
We have a question, and so I'm just going to break in and ask real quick.
Sure.
The question has to do with, are the plants still enforcing social distancing requirements, and is that starting to improve, or is that a thing of the past, or that we're getting in front of, or where does that stand now?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Lucas. And we do have, so we the plants that we are engaged with, some of them are in the United States, some of them are outside of the United States. So it's varied, and I believe the US has made strides of not having to deal with social distancing as we have in the past. It's improving, but it's still not where it was pre-COVID. So hopefully that makes sense. That's a tough one to answer because it's varied.
Thank you. And also, just for the audience in general, please, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We'll jump on them as quick as we can. Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to ask Christine to talk about transportation and the challenges that she has had, that her company has had.
Great, thank you. So before I got into that, I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of the things that Dave had mentioned. There are numerous theories as to what is creating all of the transportation shortages, as well as supply shortages. And everyone says COVID, but although that is absolutely true, COVID is only one part of it, because with COVID, everyone going home, you had zero or certainly fewer workers in the factories, in manufacturing, although they were essential. Not all of them wanted to go, and nobody forced them to go to work. But that doesn't explain all of it, because the demand is completely distorted as to products, goods, services, we thought those would increase. They didn't. And the reason we don't think that COVID is the sole or even a huge impact today is the time of the demand was much later in 2020 than when COVID's first impact and restrictions actually had lifted around May, June. And it wasn't until the third and fourth quarter that we really saw the surge in the demand. And one thing to keep in mind about demand is there's two components to it, which is the consumers are demanding product. So there's, let's just say, a 10% increase in some item. The suppliers then, in order to make sure that they can satisfy consumers or try to, they'll order 20% of the product. So now the product, when it actually does get manufactured, there's much more of it being put into the supply chain. And therefore, the transportation needs have now increased beyond what is really necessary. That, and also I believe it's $6 trillion that the government pumped in to help alleviate some of the stress of the pandemic, and that absolutely fueled consumer spending. The third thing that I'd like you all to consider is capacity. And by capacity, certainly there is, the shortage of workers, the shortage of equipment, but also keep in mind, with your own business, you want to work at your maximum capacity. You're not hiring one person to do 50% of the job. You're hiring one person to do 90 or 100 or 120% of the job until you hire another person. Same thing with equipment. And because transportation is like every other business, everyone is working at or near capacity. When there is a disproportionate surge that is prolonged, it's very difficult for businesses across the whole supply chain to ramp up to meet that need, because now they need to hire more workers or purchase more equipment and are unable to do so. So those three causes have created an imbalance in supply and demand. And that unfortunately hasn't changed, because just when we thought the pandemic was easing up, you also had various unrelated, pretty unpredictable events, such as the polar vortex in 2021 that shut down the South for several months. Certainly had an impact on rail. Trucking companies don't want to send their drivers out on potentially icy roads, and every day, week that there's a delay causes additional backup. Then even more recently, you have the war in Ukraine. A lot of people talk about limited supply because of all of the product that was exported from Ukraine. I think some people don't consider, I certainly didn't consider the fact that the sanctions on Russia prevent companies going through Russia. And so all of the product that is traveling through Russia on rail, I believe it's something like 1 million containers. It's something very, very high, is now being rerouted. And with the issues in the Black Sea, I think that there are very few steamships willing to go through there. And when they do, it's at an exorbitant cost. And then I think there was a question about plants shut down. As Dave said, a lot of product is still coming in through China. And with Shanghai's phased shutdowns that is occurring now through the beginning of April because of their zero COVID restrictions, the bottlenecks at the Pudong airport, as well as Ningbo port, which a lot of product goes through, everyone's being rerouted to other ports. So that impact is going to be felt in the next few months. Could you switch to the next slide? So this is just a quick picture so that you can see where there are holdups, and unfortunately they're everywhere. So from, and you know, I'm talking really from overseas products, because local products, you're really going to be looking at ports, intermodal, even without the vessels. But the vessels have, the capacity is completely maxed out. And to get a berth for a container, especially if you're a smaller manufacturer, as Dave was saying, it's nearly impossible if you only have 5 containers going on a steamship. The steamship lines are looking for those big volume manufacturers who are sending, you know, 10, 20 containers at a time. Everyone has heard, I think, of the ports and the problems with the ports in LA and Long Beach, which are the largest receiver of steamship and these containers. They had an unprecedented backlog of 109 vessels in queue in January 2022. It eased up only a little bit in February into March because of the slowdown in Asia due to the Lunar New Year festivities. However, those are expected to have some backup again as people ramp up for the peak summer seasons. And now the East Coast ports are looking, are congested, and it is going to get worse. I mentioned the Black Sea earlier. You've got ships, the smaller ones that used to ply the Black Sea. Those are being taken out of there, and the shipping lines are using those smaller vessels to go to the Europe, Eurasia route into the East Coast. So we're going to expect some significant delays in the East Coast ports also. Intermodal. Intermodal, I didn't even know what it was 2 years ago before I came, and I'm not quite sure what it is. So the intermodal trucking and intermodal rail refers to the system of transportation to get a box container from one place to another. So the truck driver has just the tractor portion of it. The chassis, which is the part with the wheels, and the box is what you pick up from the port or the railroad. They are not owned by the trucking companies usually. And so companies have no control over the maintenance and repair. A lot of the chassis are in disrepair, and the containers are the goods and the equipment of the steamship lines or the railroads. There is a shortage of containers because they are sitting in China, they are sitting in India, or they're sitting in the ports trying to get back out to the ships. And then the truckload, which is the vast majority of all consumer goods, they all go through trucks, whether they are the full load trucks or whether the trucks that you see on the road all the time delivering groceries. Almost every consumer product gets to your retail store through the trucks. I want to speak to the driver shortage. I've heard in various articles recently that that is made up. There's really not a driver shortage, and that the trucking companies are just saying that to drive up pricing. Absolutely not true, certainly not at my company. In 2019, the Trucking Association already estimated that there was a 60,000 person shortage in truck drivers. In 2021, it's increased to 80,000. There are a variety of factors, one of which is the pandemic. A lot of drivers are older in age. That number of average age of driver has increased somewhat because the view of truck drivers in the last 30 years has really changed. And right now, there is a big push to recruit new drivers. Every trucking company has that problem. And without a driver, you know, it doesn't matter how much equipment you have, you're not getting anything anywhere. One aspect that the government is trying to push is recruiting young drivers who are 18 years old and giving them mentorship. But as many of you, may know, you can't get a rental car from Enterprise or Hertz until you're 23 or 25 years old. And now you're thinking that you're going to put an 18-year-old into an 80,000-pound vehicle. It's just not something that companies like ours would do. We would hire them after a year or two of experience. It is, and even if it works, and we hope that it does, my understanding is there's about 3,500 recruits in the system now. That's really not going to have an impact unless that number continues to double over the next 7 to 10 years. There are other issues that are directly impacting the trucking companies, but we're doing the best we can to get freight to where it needs to go. And the demand is just exorbitant right now. We're doing everything we can just to get our regular routes covered, say nothing about trying to help other customers get their freight to the consumer. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Christine, there was a question, and it has to do with the Port of Baltimore. There's been some anecdotal comments that the Port of Baltimore is actually not undergoing any real stress from additional import material coming through it, and that they've actually been accepting material diverted from other ports on the East Coast that have received stress. Do you guys have any experience with materials coming through Port of Baltimore, and whether it's been up or down or impacted in any way?
We have intermodal agents that pull out of the Port of Baltimore. There definitely is an increase in the amount of cargo going through Baltimore. The issue with Baltimore is the accessibility. As you all may know, an evergreen ship is stuck and has been stuck for several weeks in our waters. And so it's hard to get in and out. There's not, as expansive as we may think our port is, there's not a lot of room to get, hundreds of containers off of a ship and then to get the containers out of the port. So, it's a step. Every increase in capacity really puts a lot of pressure on everything else. So, if our port, I'm just pulling out numbers, if our port can handle 1,000 containers and you're getting ships coming in and they're already waiting at port and you've got 1,500 containers, there's nowhere to put those 500 containers. So the ship is sitting in the port without and waiting for containers to move out. You don't all of a sudden have a bunch of drivers ready to pick up those containers and move them away from the port.
Thank you. There's also a second question, and that is there a federal agency that oversees the supply chain as a whole?
I don't believe so, not as a whole, because we are covered by the FMCSA. The ship vessels are covered by someone completely different, a completely different agency. The ports are, I believe, a state-controlled animal, and so I don't think that there is one that can regulate and tell everyone what to do. I don't imagine any agency would want to do that, because the regulations that each mode of transportation must follow are pretty detailed and pretty rigorous.
The second half of that question is a little bit loaded, but is there any way, or is there a specific target or entity that can can control this in a way to organize it and sort of quote solve this mess, or is that just not, there is no way?
The comment that I have seen over and over again is the only way to fix this mess is to really curb consumer demand for a while. Even if demand drops now, as it looks like it's doing due to the increase in interest rates, that demand, it's what I said before, suppliers have ordered and purchased a lot of product. So now all of that product is still trying to filter through the transportation system. And we're not going to see change until probably the fourth quarter 2022 at best, and more likely through into 2023. You can't make people drive trucks. You can't make our manufacturers manufacture more trucks. They're just not there. They don't have the equipment, they don't have the chips. And so it is not an easy task.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Just to kind of dovetail onto what Christine is saying about drivers, we have roughly 40 route trucks that deliver every day into the DMV. And we're really struggling with the labor because we require CDL drivers for our trucks. And it is actually a real thing of having this driver shortage. So I would absolutely second that. And another topic that Christine touched on is the demand. And so, when we realized that it was going to be harder to get product, obviously, what do? It's second nature. You're going to order more. It's the same thing like when you go to the grocery store and buy milk when there's a storm. So we've done that. We've increased our orders sometimes 3-4 times, just to get our place in line to get product to be able to support our customers. So yeah, thank you, Christine. That was very, very good. So we're going to jump into how we have managed through this, what we've done to try to help our customers navigate it, and how to mitigate some of the risk that's involved with this current situation that we're in. So, no longer is it the status quo. We have going to walk through the life cycle of a purchase order. And so, we get an RFQ from a customer. We go out into the market and gather pricing. We assemble a quote and we put that out in the marketplace. We get awarded a project, we get a purchase order from our customer, and then that purchase order in turn, we place, sometimes one or sometimes multiple purchase orders, depending on what's included in that package. So no longer will a vendor hold pricing on a hold for release purchase order. So what that's done is that's driven us to revise our terms to our customers. And so we've had to, with Rob's help, just revise, what's going out on our quotes to make sure that our manufacturer's terms are getting flowed down to our customers. And that's a difficult situation to navigate when everybody is used to placing an order and holding the price. Our vendor quotes have, expiration clauses, they have release clauses, and the Dominion quotes, we flow that back up the I'll call it the chain, but back up through the electrical contractor, and that makes it to the general contractor. So orders that are placed on hold for, let's say, more than 90 days, typically they have escalation clauses. And we've been able to pass that on to our electrical contractors. And from what I'm being told is that they're getting some relief on the general contractor and owner side, where they're actually the GC and owner entities are accepting escalation clauses on contracts and pricing that they're getting. They don't like it, but they certainly understand it. And we need to let our customers know that you have a certain amount of time to release this order. We have one vendor that actually gives us a 30-day notification that once they produce approval drawings and give those approval drawings to Dominion, that we have 30 days for release, or there would be subject to a possible price increase. So it's a big push to get orders released, not only to hold pricing, but to get your place in line to get your product. So what do we do about that? So how are we learning and growing and trying to help our customers? So number one, this is a relationship business. We deal with customers that we've had relationships for decades with. And so it's really about managing their expectations and educating them. We need to be the eyes and ears and the knowledge of what's going on in the chain, at the factory level and at the production level. So what we have found to be really helpful is having kickoff meetings on a project. And so we're presented with an opportunity, and we have a kickoff meeting with not just the customer and Dominion, but also with our factories. And we talk about their expectations, and we talk about the factory's capabilities, and what's going to make this project successful. And so really it's about like managing expectations, communication. We also have vetted out our vendors. And so we will look at our vendor, and we'll look at what vendor is required on this project. And, we want to know, in the past, has this vendor been helpful if there's a delay? Do they have a plan B or an alternate product? And so we're really digging deeper into the vendor side of our business. We used to rarely know when equipment was required. We just relied on the electrical contractor to release it within the provided lead times. But we've changed that. We insist on knowing when this material is required to be on site. And we look at every opportunity on a case-by-case basis. And if our experience tells us that, this is not very likely to be successful, we'll express that and have that communication with our customer. One of the other things that we've found very helpful is visiting our vendors. So there's no better way to understand what's going on at a factory. And when you send them that purchase order, if you see it for yourself, you see how many people do they have on the plant floor? What does this plant look like? How many orders do they have? Are they stacked up? Or and we'll invite the customer to come with us, and that really helps too. Again, it's about education, managing expectations. Some of our customers are definitely backing off of their demands on terms, as they're keenly aware of supply chain issues. It impacts, every one of our daily lives. It's not just the construction industry, but we will pass on an order, respectfully pass on an order, if they're unwilling to relinquish these terms, or if our experience tells us that we're unlikely to deliver on their expectations. So again, back to managing these expectations of our customers. So what is our, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself here. I want to talk about some of the out-of-the-box solutions. So storage. So we have two parts of our business. One is the stock and flow side, which is the parts and pieces that we inventory in our warehouse, and we deliver to job sites every day throughout the DMV. We also have the project business, which we typically never saw that equipment. It would ship from the factory directly to the job site, or possibly to a rigging company or a customer's office where they would hold it. And it was 95% of that product went from the factory to the job site. So what we've done is we've explored some storage. We have a third-party company that we've partnered with as far as storage of mainly light fixture packages. And so we will release those. Again, it's about getting it approved and released as quickly as possible. And we'll release it well before it's actually required on the job site, just so we have it in our possession. We've also just gone down the road of opening a new CDC facility in south of Baltimore, which is going to increase our footprint of warehouse space and greatly add to our ability to store material and on these projects. So that's been very helpful. There is a cost to doing that. Our customers are typically happy to pay that cost to get the material in their possession. I'm going to talk about VE packages. So that's a term that
Dave,
yes.
can I just kind of follow up on that? There's obviously a lot of positives, almost like a win-win to kind of have the material pre-ordered or pre-delivered. To Christine's point, that's just causing a bigger backlog, but you know, in the sake of getting the jobs done timely, you know, you'll have the materials there and you'll have the right materials and a fixed cost. Of course, there's insurance and warehouse costs, but can you speak to also to the point how that might impact the manufacturer's warranty?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So what we have been able to do is go to these manufacturers and buy an extended warranty or additional warranty time. So what we'll do is in the kickoff meeting, we'll discuss this with the contractor and find out, you know, when is your warranty? It's typically a duration of time after substantial completion. And so we determine what that date is. We look at the factory warranty and we see if there's a gap. And if there's a gap, we'll go back to the factory. And we've been successful in buying additional warranty, again, at a cost. And that's worked out pretty well. So that's
your customers are okay with that cost, probably because the other cost would be a lot larger. Waiting for the materials. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And you know,
still a win-win.
It's a win-win. And throughout all these issues, like it's just made us better at what we do, because in the past, maybe we wouldn't even have caught a warranty gap, and then that would have been an issue later on. And so, you know, as difficult as this is, we've really learned a lot and gotten better at what we do and helped our customers get better at what they do. So yeah, great question. So I'm going to talk about VE package, and VE is a term that's thrown around our industry, which means value engineer. And in the past, it was, you know, owner or client would come back and say, my project's over budget. How can you help me? So we would go back and find an alternate product, and we called it a value engineered product. If this is an acceptable product, then at a lower cost, then that helped the client, and they were accepting of that. So our VE packages have now turned into, you know, basically availability package, and we'll get a project that's specified, and we'll offer another product that is more readily available. And so we help drive the design on the design side, and that's been really helpful. And then on our purchasing, and I talk about the stock and flow side, you know, we've had legacy vendors that we've dealt with for decades, and they've been, you know, we've been partnered with them, and we're looking out to other vendors. So we're definitely have expanded our vendor portfolio as far as who we're buying material from. If we can't get it from one, we could possibly get it from one of these new vendors that we're forming relationships with. I'll talk about one just like quick success story that we've had. We had a large project awarded to us last year. And the specifier was requiring a certain fixture manufacturer, and the lead time was not anywhere within their requirements. And so Dominion went and offered an alternate manufacturer. So the specified manufacturer, this product used an aluminum extrusion, and the specified manufacturer, that was a vendor item for them, the aluminum extrusion. And we had a relationship with a manufacturer that extruded their own aluminum channel. So that greatly reduced the lead time, and it helped the project be successful. So that's just an example of how our customers look to us for, you know, the expertise in driving the design towards availability. And the specifiers have been much more willing to accept these changes because they're very aware of supply chain. And one of the other ways that we're helping our customers is by copper and aluminum blankets. And I'm going to kind of go through this quickly because I know we're getting close on time, but we have the ability to take a customer's bill of material, convert it into how many pounds of copper and aluminum metal it is, and we can go to the manufacturer and they'll hedge the metals for 2 years. And we can do it for up to 2 years. So it could be 1 year, 18 months, 2 years. Has to be a sizable inquiry. We've done this for years, and it's really become much more of a benefit as the copper market is very volatile. The aluminum not as volatile, but as the copper market is volatile, it will lock in their pricing on the copper wire, which is a huge number in any electricals, overall number of their contract. So that's just a few of the things that we've done and how we've learned and grown and try to help our clients. So with that, what is our outlook? Our outlook is it's really hazy. To Christine's point, late 2023, maybe, late 22, early 23, it's unlikely that this is going to return to normal. We expect continued inflation, not at the rate in 21, but certainly we do expect some increased inflation. It's going to continue to be difficult to get raw materials, as I think it was chipped last month in the first one. We have the region that there's the civil rights issues, and we'll find out in June how that's going to impact us. And then obviously a labor issue. So with that, I wish I had a crystal ball, and we don't, but the outlook is this is our new normal. So with that, that's pretty much everything I had. Hopefully that was helpful and useful, and anybody has any questions, certainly happy to attempt to answer.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions, and I think the first one is actually more targeted toward Christine, and that has to do with automation in the transportation chain and the driverless truck option. Is any of this sparking or pushing more innovation or more action towards a driverless truck delivery?
I was just talking to one of our ops guys, and autonomous trucks is going to be the wave of the future. But that's not going to help us now or in 23 or 24, 25. I mean, it's a ways off. We're hoping 7, 8, 10 years from now. Warehousing, there are a lot of European companies that have bases here in the US. You're seeing some of the automated warehousing here, but not trucks. One aspect of that is the insurance. So because of the number of insurance related issues, not only cargo, but liability, it's going to take some regulations and some tort reform to address those things before companies are really going to be using autonomous trucks. With the sensation every time the automated vehicles gets into an accident, the trucking companies don't want their name in the papers.
Okay, thank you. And a second question that I think relates to both of you, but I'll start with you, Christine, and that has to do with apprenticeship training to develop and enhance skilled labor available for your industries. And I'll start with you, and then the same question will go to Dave.
So two sides. On the logistics and operations side, we already have management training in place, meaning we bring someone in who has an interest in logistics and transportation and takes them through all of operations from soup to nuts. It is a lengthy process. It is a lot of resources to train that person, but we hope that they will stay. They obviously have no requirement to stay, even if you had a contract with them, but that is already in the works. On the driver side, it's a much more difficult issue. We currently have a plan that is bringing drivers who are only 6 months out. We normally don't look at anyone unless they have a year of experience at a minimum. But we have tried a few times to take ones who are 6 months out and then train them and have them work with other drivers for a period of time. The problem is it's a lot of resources. And then once they get that additional 6 months under their belt, they'll jump to another carrier. And it's not because they don't like us or something we did wrong. It's just they don't know what another company is like. So, if they come back, if they don't come back, and then every time there's a turnover, if we take 12 people through and only 2 or 3 stay after 2 years, it's a problem. So we're working on seeing how that works. We're hoping that, once they're 6 months out versus being brand new, we'll have better retention, but we're not getting a lot of applicants even, at the 6-month period. So, most of the issue is getting the truck driving schools open. They were shut down for a long time. And so, we're 2 years out, we should be getting 2020 graduates, and there aren't any. And so, that is also a struggle.
And Dave, from your side.
Yeah, so great question. It's something that we're not as good at as we should be, but we have our HR department recruits from the apprenticeship. So, the young folks that get into the apprenticeship, maybe they find out that they don't want to be out in the field doing the actual work, but they know the product. And so we recruit from the electrical apprenticeships, community colleges, and it's our business is not a sexy business. So when you go to try to recruit young folks to get into this business, they say, they're first off, they're not really aware of what it is. And so it takes a lot of energy to get these folks on board. And there's no real, there's one actual college I believe it's in Texas, that actually gives an electrical distributor degree. It's tough to get those folks when you do get them. To Christine's point, it's a tremendous amount of resources to train people. It takes years to get them proficient. So we have this big investment in these folks, and it's, you got to do a lot of work to keep them here and keep them engaged. The cost of living in the DC Baltimore area is something that works against us as well. So yeah, that's a daily challenge, and that our company spends a lot of time and effort. And to the point of the truck drivers, so we have the same issue with truck drivers is, in the wintertime when construction slows down, we have a better chance of getting drivers. And then these folks will jump for, a little bit more pay, a little bit, more hours than we can give them. So it's tough to keep those folks on staff.
All right. And then the last thing I wanted to do was just some final comments. Just something from each one of you to tell, whether you're speaking to an owner or a contractor or a trade subcontractor, what should they take away from what you guys see and what you think? And Rob, I'll start with you.
Well, I think the unfortunate news is it's going to be more of the same for a while, for the foreseeable future. I also think, and hopefully I'm not going to take away from Dave and Christine, but as much as the industry is go, I think everyone's got to have a little bit more understanding of everyone's pressures, because, you know, as lawyers know, the impossibility argument is just sitting out there. To, you know, what can you do if you can't get the product, you can't get the labor, you can't do the contract.
Okay, thank you. Dave, anything from you?
You know, we keep going back to managing expectations. Please don't set us up for failure. We work very, very hard at being creative and offering any kind of solution that we could come up with. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get pulled into, I can't get my equipment. And, you know, we've gotten better at solutions, but the takeaway is just manage expectations, understand the reality of how difficult this is, and yeah, treat each other like you'd want to be treated.
And Kathleen, I'll give you a chance to talk, but I have a feeling you're going to say no thanks. All right, Christine, your last words, please.
Relationships. You know, we are an old-fashioned company that, you know, if Joe Cowan could do it, he'd say, Christine, stop writing contracts and making people sign contracts. You know, a handshake is good enough, which isn't necessarily true anymore, but building that relationship so that we don't leave our customer in the dust because we have someone willing to pay a lot more money to get their freight where it needs to go. We stabilize the rates. It'll hurt us sometimes, it'll hurt the customer sometimes, but that understanding and managing expectations on both ends is key. The other thing that I would tell people, and a lot of our customers have done it, is, you know, and Dave mentioned it, is look to where you're getting product. You're going to have to be more flexible. A lot of people stopped doing business in China and moved some of their manufacturing or where they got things from different areas, not necessarily just now, but, you know, a few years ago, to try to diversify where they were getting their products. So you really need to take a look at that and the long-term effect of not diversifying.
Thank you. I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody, especially Dave, Christine, Kathleen, and Rob for their time and for the participants. And the last comment that I'll make, unless anybody has anything else to add, is that we do have one more session of this program coming up on April 27th. That will feature Jim Thompson from Harkins, Matt Oakey, who is an attorney in Baltimore, and Sean Matlock, giving discussions on the same issue, but from the perspectives of the owner, the general contractor, and the public owner. So please join us on April 27th at lunch for the next session in the series. And again, thanks everybody and have a good day.
Thank you, Lucas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas.
Bye-bye.